You know, I really do. I deal with like people in this. I really do. I deal with people in this town all the time, right? And it feels almost like if you don't live in the way or the accord that they want you to, or if they can't groom you, they force you out. If they can't create the version of you they want you to be, they force you out. And I can tell you right now, that's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. You're not going to be able to change me into the form that you want me to be. I'm never gonna be the guy who just listens to rock music or listens to rap music or just listens to country and Christian. It's just not gonna happen. I'm always gonna be eclectic as hell. I'm always gonna keep my mind open to new genres and new types of music. I'm gonna keep my mind open to new ideas, new formulas, and always try to maintain a concurrent morality standard of what is right and what is wrong. You cannot gaslight me into believing that my moral code is and ethics are tragically wrong or judgmental, because when you hurt someone, and I mean when you hurt someone, mentally, physically, sexually, any way, you're doing wrong. Okay, that's just simple logic. It doesn't require a god or deity to understand this. This is simple logic. You learn this when you first hit someone and you feel bad for doing it. That's conscience. God doesn't tell you to do that. You will feel it, and you can feel it. Okay? So, people ask, well, why would you want to do that to yourself? Why would you try to please everyone? It's not about pleasing everyone. It's about keeping an open mind. And my question to those people who want to change me is, what's in it for you? Literally, what is in it for you to change someone else to your living standard? Is it some incronym of power? And the question I'll get back is, well, what's in it for you? What's in it for you to try to elevate people to have an open mind? That's a good question. Because I live in a world where people think that hell and heaven are destinations after they die. They don't understand that hell and heaven are not destinations. They're not final destinations. They are directions. Humankind has within it the capacity to create heaven and hell on earth, and they don't even know. They have no fucking clue. You guys have a vast array of all the compendium of all human knowledge, and you use it to make cat videos and trash talk each other and show the worst parts of humanity ever made. Okay? It's just that simple. You guys don't realize that the path to heaven isn't a path to a destination. It is literally a series of choices. Okay? Heaven is a series of choices that you make that create either a utopia, and hell is a series of choices that you can make to create a dystopia. And you guys are headed toward a dystopia. You're creating your own hell. Christians have it somewhat fucking backwards. I genuinely believe that Christians have it backwards. They think to themselves, if I put myself through hell now, then I can get to heaven later. And it's just not the truth. It's just not the case. And I'm not saying that do what makes you feel good no matter what it does. That's a very blank and just overly generalized statement to make, and I think the people who make that are making it carelessly. I think that you should do right and do right. Doing right and doing right by others and not hurting each other is probably the best method you could take. But ultimately, I think that with all the tools we have, we can create our heaven, we can create our hell. And it's all a matter of how we use those tools. We have the internet, we have the ability to understand, and we have the ability to solve all of humans' problems through the vast accumulation of knowledge that we can acquire. But instead we use it to debate each other online, to talk trash in videos. And I think that's extremely detrimental to the tool itself. People are starving for a time where they can go back before the internet, because it's just how we've used it is just atrocious. Which I understand that the whole reset idea definitely makes sense, but will it change the behaviors? I mean, will it really change the behaviors? And if you think about it, no, it won't. It won't change the behaviors at all. You have to look inward at how you want your society to be formed, and then you have to act in accordance. It's that simple. Heaven is not a destination. It's a series of direction. It's literally what your life turns out as after you've made the choices that create that. So, like, if I want heaven on earth, I'll make a series of choices in which my life helps produce that outcome. If I want hell on earth, I'll make a series of choices that obviously create more struggle for others as well as myself, and they produce that outcome. Heaven is quite clearly saying, living to a certain accord under which your life is not only easier, but your life is better and more contributive to the overall goal of producing a better life. All right? And hell is making struggle for yourself and others so that you can produce the overall outcome, guys. Be nice. So you can produce the overall outcome that creates hell. So, like, if you're struggling and you're causing others to struggle because you're struggling, well, now you've trapped yourself in the events of eternal hell. You're now tormenting yourself and others. In heaven, it's always talked about how everything is given to you and brought. Nothing's given to you. I'll get to that point in a second. But you get to a point in life where it's not given to you, but it's there. And you don't need it to be given to you anymore because you've made the series of choices where you've acquired what you needed and you've acquired what you wanted and you've lived honestly and you've lived truthfully. That is the difference between my thought process and the thought processes of like Christians and theists. Like, if heaven and hell are real, that's what I believe they would be. I believe they are the series of outcomes that we create that either leads us to a dystopia or utopia. And there's several forms of dystopia and utopia. I'm not talking about like global dystopia and global utopia, but we can make a utopia for ourselves, okay? By making our lives the best possible versions of our lives that our lives could be through the series of choices we make. And I think that's a weird concept that a lot of people don't grasp, you know? Now, I don't always practice this. That's my big problem. My big problem is I don't always practice this. I often go on revenge plots, and I'm not gonna lie. I feel sometimes it's warranted because people do not learn unless they are shown what they have put others through. All right? A lot of times, when you're a baby, or when you're a kid, I guess, and you smack another kid and that kid smacks you back, that is a learning lesson right there that kid is gonna, that's the reaction you're gonna get. Okay? Like, that's the reaction you're gonna get. And a lot of people are like, oh man, no. If your kid bullies another kid and that kid happens to hit that kid back, that kid is teaching the bully a very valuable lesson, okay? And honestly, that needs to be taught because apparently you're not teaching it at home. Instead of trying to say, well, my kid should be able to bully whoever the fuck he wants with no retaliation, you should be teaching your kid not to bully. But because you're failures of teaching someone else is left to do that for you. And often, and sadly, it's the other kid. So, like, that's in a reaction versus action scenario that teaches someone. And it sucks. It sucks that is the way society is. Because I wish we could escape to a point where we evolve past that boundary and we see our differences as strengths rather than the stiflements that we claim them to be. And that we actually form a utopia because of our differences rather than in spite of them. Or despite them, you know? I think that if you've got people, there's a job for everyone out there. I do believe that. Someone told me this a long time ago. There's a job for everyone out there. There just is. And, like, that's my idea on life. And people can debate with me about how I'm taking the Bible out of context and all that, but I really don't believe the Bible is any more than a book that is made by people in our past that created propaganda for their wars. A lot of it. And then once it was kind of critiqued to be too harsh, they made the New Testament. I genuinely feel that. I don't know if there's evidence of a Jesus' existence. I don't feel like there is evidence of a Jesus' existence. Everyone says there is, but I've seen too many things that lead me to believe that Jesus is a copyright issue with other religions that came before it. He just is. There's several religions that came before Christianity that shared a lot of the same traits of Christianity. And I'm not just talking about prophets or books. I am talking about things that came long before Christianity even existed. And they share the same traits and similarities that almost seem like Christianity is a plagiarism of all those prior religions. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I really am. And I know this because there's not people who are willing to look into that. And they are going to wall it off because that's what Christianity teaches you. Christianity teaches you not to look beyond, because looking beyond creates skepticism, it creates doubt, and they want that full-on faith. And critical thinking is just not a part of religion. It's just not. It just isn't. And especially, well, I wouldn't say completely. You could probably critically think about politics or policies. But even now, like in today's age, you're not even able to do that. If you think outside your political spectrum, it's considered taboo now. If you prescribe to Republican or Democrat and you think outside of that spectrum at all, in the molecule, you even raise question on whether or not you're the bad guys, you're a traitor. And it's funny how politics have emulated religion in that situation, in that context. And if you really want to go deeper into this, you look at the way governments use religion, and you look at how religion is formed. Look at the Bible, yeah. There's a lot of war talk in the Bible. A lot of talk about crusades and conquerings and things of that nature, of country after country after country. And if in anything, I do believe that these wars happened. I do believe that these wars existed, and I do believe these territories were conquered, but I just don't believe that they were conquered in the exact same way they were spoken of. And for the reason I don't believe this is because to the victor goes the spoils, which means whoever makes the history writes it. Dead people don't write history. They don't. It's just that simple. They get to be a part of the history that the survivors write. And that sucks, but that's just life, okay? When I look at the Bible, I see all these wars. I see kings. I see the word Lord thrown around left and right. I look at the UK. I look at modern era version of Lord, and I see a lot of similarities in how it's thrown around. And I can't not think that perhaps, just perhaps, religions are formed by the governments that create those religions, or by the governments that adopt and create those religions, specifically as a tool for governance. And if you look at the dollar bill, and it says, "In God we trust," and you look at the history of the U.S., and you look at the fact that Puritans were the first settlers here, aside from, because I can't really say the Native Americans were, because they were not settlers, they were natives. So people are going to correct me in the comments, "Oh, they weren't settlers, natives were there already," okay? They weren't settlers. So you drop that argument. What I will say is, I just find it extremely odd that overall the things that, I do believe that we could evolve past these boundaries we've created in our minds. I do believe that our differences can inherently create strengths. I don't think that religion is going to allow for that. I really don't. I think that as long as we segregate ourselves through thought processes, we're going to segregate ourselves physically. It's just that simple. And yeah, that's my take on life. I don't know if anyone buys that or understands it or even comprehends it. I probably didn't even explain it that well, but that's the way I feel. It's just that simple. Anyway, that's my 15 minutes, my rant. Peace. I got an 8-hour drive to go see my son. Have a good one.